Item 3-6.04, number 1. Senator from Grayson County, Senator Carrico.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I would ask that we would not accept this amendment. This is the amendment that basically takes away local fines, a percentage of it, 30% of the local fines that are collected by the local sheriffs whenever they are utilizing the adoption of ordinances in their locality. I know that we had a standalone bill that was defeated in Transportation Committee on a vote of 10 to 4 on the policy issue of this, and now I recognize that it's in the budget. In a time in which we are asking so much demands on our law enforcement agencies, and we are not sending them any more money than what the 1 in 1,500 deputies are funded for, we really need to be conscientious of what we're doing to the localities, especially in the regions where they're the hardest hit. And we also have a shortage, and I know that we're working towards trying to put more troopers on the highway, but at this point in time, we have several hundred man shortage in the state police, and we can use all the law enforcement help that we can get on the highways today. And I would ask that this body would reject this amendment, and if someone from the Appropriations Committee wants to speak to why and why this is in here and what it's going towards, I would love to hear.
The senator from Stafford County, Senator Stuart.
Mr. President.
For what purpose does the senator rise?
I rose to see if the gentleman from Powhatan would take the floor for the purposes of a question.
Senator, we do. Well, the senator from Stafford County, Senator Stuart, yields. Will the senator from Powhatan yield for a question?
Certainly.
Senator yields. Senator from Bath County.
Mr.
Senator
President, I'd ask the gentleman if he did not introduce a bill that would effectively require sheriff's deputies or local police officers who gave tickets to do so under, at least on federal highways, to write the tickets under state law.
The senator from Powhatan, Senator Watkins.
I introduced a piece of legislation that would have required that any tickets written on primary and interstate highways, primary highways being federal aid highways, would be remitted to the Literary Loan Fund as the Constitution of Virginia requires.
Mr.
Senator from Bath County, Senator Deeds.
Well, that would require, I'd ask the gentleman, that the tickets be written under state law, not under a local ordinance.
Senator from Powhatan, Senator Watkins.
I would agree, but I would also point out to the gentleman that we took state law and overrode the Constitution by giving them permission to write statute, if you don't mind, write local ordinance over state statutes in order to divert the funds. And the problem that we have, Mr. President, is that over the past year, they've diverted about $100 million out of what should have gone to the Literary Loan Fund. This accommodation in this amendment would provide that if a locality is so possessed with writing local ordinance tickets that they rose to a level of greater than 30%, then anything above the 30% would have to be split 50-50 between the locality and the constitutionally required Literary Loan Fund. We're denying monies to go to the Literary Loan Fund that would otherwise be paying for teachers' salaries and schools, and also could be used to pay some of the VRS backlog. But it's not there anymore because it has been usurped and diverted.
Senator from Bath County.
Mr. President, as a senator from Grayson suggested, there was a bill introduced and defeated in the General Law Committee by a vote of 10-4, and the effect of this amendment would basically be to override the act of the committee and
No.
yes,
But just state your question, Senator.
okay. Is that not correct?
Senator from Powhatan, Senator Watkins.
I would say to the gentleman that is not correct, because that particular piece of legislation was specific to only interstates and federal aid highways. And it was directed specifically at a problem that we have in a few jurisdictions, particularly with interstate highways.
So,
Senator from Bath County,
Mr. President, so
Senator
the gentleman suggesting to me that this amendment's broader even than that legislation?
Senator from Powhatan, Senator Watkins.
I would say to the gentleman that this effectively says that if you're going to utilize local ordinances over top of state law, state statute, to divert money from the constitutionally required commitment to the Literary Loan Fund, that you would split it a third of the money would come to the constitutionally required Literary Loan Fund.
Senator from Bath County, Senator Dees.
I thank the gentleman.
Senator from Stafford County, Senator Stuart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I too would hope that the body would reject this amendment. We continue to put the burden on local governments more and more and more and more and more. And frankly, Mr. President, I think that's irresponsible. We're not here to push the burden down. We're here to deal with the problems that we face. The local governments rely on the little bit of money that they get out of writing these local ordinances, and this will have an adverse impact on the sheriff's departments. It'll have an adverse impact on all of the constitutional officers. I'm not aware of any constitutional officer that has reached staffing standards under the comp board's formulas. So they have 75% or 80% staffing standards or something like that. The localities use this money to supplement those positions and help keep those areas funded to hire additional people. And it's just simply unfair to take this away from them now. We've done enough damage to them in too many other aspects. So I hope we'll reject this, Mr. President.
Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
President, speaking to the amendment. Mr. President, as the committee, as the members of the Senate know, the process is this. Law enforcement officers have the ability to write tickets, whether it be on local roads, state roads, for local ordinances, trespassing, minor criminal violations, or whatnot, as do state law enforcement. What this amendment does not approach anything that the senator from Powhatan did. This is a separate issue. What this says is that regardless of where a ticket is written, if a locality is writing local ordinances above 30% of the entire take that they're bringing in, then they have to return some of that money to the state to go to education. And Mr. President, as you look at the numbers over the last few years, they're actually relatively astounding. Right now, in 2008, the amount of money collected by localities approached right around $92 million. In 2010 and 2011, that number had increased to $104.5 million. To give you some additional perspective over those 4 years, state collections increased at 1.4%, and local collections increased at about 12.5%, far outdistancing the amount of money that was coming back to the state. This reestablishes the equilibrium between the state and the localities, does not prevent localities from writing tickets, as many as they would like, on whatever roads, whether they be federal or state roads, but does say if you go over 30% of the total collections, then a portion of that money is going to come back to education and be returned to the literary fund.
Mr. President.
Mr. President, I would also...
What purpose does the senator rise?
Ask the senator a question.
Will the senator from Hanover yield for a question?
Mr. President, I'll yield as soon as I finish.
He will yield as soon as he finishes. Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Additionally, Mr. President, of those monies they go back to the literary fund from the state. The monies that would go locally could go to law enforcement, but they could also go to any other matter. They're not restricted when they go back to localities. This ensures that we know where the dollars are going, as the senator from Powhatan indicated, to the constitutionally prescribed direction of the literary fund and education. Mr. President, I would yield.
Thanks. The senator from Grayson County, Senator Carrico.
Would the gentleman answer the question as to if we began to take away what the prescribed amount is in this amendment, the 30%, with the state staffing about 85% of those deputies, and they utilize this money in order to have the manpower out on the roads to write the tickets. How do you expect, taking away that manpower, that this amount is even going to be there because they're not going to be on the highway?
Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Mr. President, I would answer the gentleman in this way. Our public safety budget entirely increased a little bit over 1.5% since 2007. The local collections in the last 4 years have increased 12.5%. State has only increased 1.5%. The dollar numbers in that time frame are about 12 million additional that localities have collected. What we would be doing with this amendment is only less than splitting half of that increase of 4 million. Mr. President, I would answer the senator from Grayson that this is returning an equilibrium balance, is not going to impact the ability of localities to continue to perform law enforcement agencies, law enforcement functions as they would see fit.
Senator from Grayson County, Senator Carrico.
Final question for Senator from Hanover.
Senator has the floor.
He gave the numbers of 12% increase opposed to what the states were. Would he not agree that that is a collective effort by those departments in order to enforce public safety measures on the highway? And by taking away the dollars, he's only reducing any amount that they will be bringing in, and the state would not be able to count upon the amount of money that he's basing this upon because they're not going to be there.
Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Mr. President, I would indicate the evidence is somewhat to the contrary, that over the last 4 years, the volume of increase has been substantial. Part of the challenges, as those of us who deal in traffic-related operations know, is the ability of clerk's office to be able to process those cases and move through them appropriately. At other places in the budget, we were able to address that. I think by doing the actions in total with the budget, including this one, we will have a more efficient court system, a more efficient law enforcement system, will not negatively impact their overall revenues, but allow justice to be administered fairly and faster. And Mr. President, I would move that item C-6.04, number 1S, be agreed to.
Thanks. Senator from Louisa, Senator Garrett.
Mr. President, I would speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
I would concur wholeheartedly with the senator from Bath, the senator from Grayson, the senator from Stafford. At some point, having been a local elected official, it's time to say enough is enough. 4 years in a row as a Commonwealth's attorney, I went to the Board of Supervisors once a year, didn't want to go, and said, please just hold us harmless. As the comp board money dried up, and as it's doing in sheriff's offices and police departments across the Commonwealth. $4 million may not be a whole lot in an $85 billion biennial budget, but $32,000 sure is an awful lot in Amherst County. At what point do we say we're going to stop taking limited revenue streams from localities? If you believe in the Dillon rule, and you recognize what's going to happen with reassessments as they come up in our localities, and you've worked in local government, particularly in small rural localities like I have, then you know a few thousand here and a few thousand there is a death by 1,000 cuts. I have the utmost admiration for the senators who've spoken in favor of this. I've learned immensely from each of them, but at some point we need to draw the line. I ask the senators today to join us in voting for this measure to support funding our localities. This little bit of money to us is a lot of money to them.
Thank you. The senior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator Wagner.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I will point out that earlier we took a vote on diverting $100 million from the transportation that the governor proposed from the sales tax general fund money over and back into the general fund. That money, all of it, every nickel of it went to K through 12 education. Every nickel of that money will go right down to the localities. So if we really are about helping the localities, I would have hoped you'd hope to support that amendment, and I hope you'd support this amendment also.
Thanks, sir. The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. The chair is in doubt. There will be a recorded vote. The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 23, noes 15.
Ayes 23, noes 15. The committee amendment is agreed to.
And we